Hi, this is Nick. In this video, I will share how to calculate the difference between two rows. For instance, every day we keep track of a meter reading, and we want to know what's the difference between two rows. In this case, current row minus the previous one above. Also, I will show you the same thing for current minus two rows prior, or the next row below, or two rows below. Let's check out the first scenario, which is to calculate the difference between the current row and the previous one above. First, we need to load data into Power BI, and in the query editor, click on the drop-down menu of the date column and sort it in ascending order. And then click on Add Column, Index Column, and then from 1 to add in a new column with one index number assigned to each row. And let's go back to Power BI Desktop to create a new column, not new measure, to get the row difference. And let's name the column as the differential to get the difference between the current row and the previous row. And let's check out the formulas one piece at a time. First, we need to create a variable for the current row and let it return the index column we just created. And then we create another variable to return the values from the meter reading column. And now we need to get a reading or value for the previous row above using the calculate and max function. And notice that the way we get the previous row is to let the current index minus 1, meaning the previous row above. And finally, we will return the difference between current row and the previous row, which is what we need to calculate. And here's the whole formulas. Please take your time to input it onto Power BI. Now we have created a column for the differential, but we still need to make a slight change for the first row, as we need to make it as blank, because there's no previous row for the first row. And what we're going to do is to create another column with the switch function to make the adjustment. So if the index is 1, meaning the very first row, we will assign a blank value to it and keep the rest values as the same. And now let's look at scenario 2, which is to calculate the current row minus two rows above or two rows prior. And we just need to make a teeny tiny change on the differential column. Minus 2 meaning two rows prior from the current row. And of course, minus 3 would be three rows above. And again, we need to make adjustment to make the first two rows blank. We will use the switch function again. And if index equals 1 and 2, meaning the very first row and the second row, we will assign a blank value to each of them. And now let's check out scenario 3, which is the current row minus the next row below. And same thing here, all we need is to change it to index plus 1, meaning the next one row below the current row. And again, we need to make the very last row as blank, because there's no next row below the last row. We will use the max x function to get the largest index value across the table, meaning getting the very last row at the very bottom, and then we just need to assign a blank value to it. And finally, scenario 4, current row minus two rows below. Again, same old for differential with index plus 2, meaning two rows below the current row. And then we will use those formulas to make the last two rows as blank for the adjusted differential.